Welcome to the Fun Astrology and Merriman Market Analyst Saturday Financial Podcast. I'm Thomas Miller. Thank you so much for joining us. This is the free weekly newsletter published every weekend on MMAcycles.com by financial analyst and astrologer Ray Merriman, one of the men who basically created financial astrology and has been combining the sky and market cycles for over 50 years. This is the newsletter for the week of July 1st, 2024. Is being recorded and released on January 29th. To get us started, an article that was published on Saturday in the Wall Street Journal, written by Peggy Noonan. She says, it was, in fact, as consequential as any presidential debate in history, and the worst night for an incumbent in history. It was a total and unmitigated disaster for Mr. Biden. It was a rout for Mr. Trump. It's impossible to believe that the Democrats will continue with Mr. Biden as their presidential standard-bearer." End quote. And now Ray's commentary. Politics and financial markets exhibited a tug-of-war between the worrisome dynamics of Saturn turning retrograde and euphoric hopefulness of Neptune also turning retrograde, with both stations taking place June 29th for Saturn, July 2nd for Neptune. That is, some markets trolled their lowest prices in several weeks, while others continued making all-time or multi-year highs. In a way, the market's contradictory behavior reflected the stark contrast between the performance of the two U.S. presidential candidates in Thursday evening's debate. One side was euphoric, the other shocked and stunned by reality, and now in a state of crisis about their future. More on that in the short-term Geocosmics section coming up. First, let's look at last week's conflicted market behavior. European stock markets were mostly stuck in congestion between their highs and lows of the past 6 weeks. The Netherlands AEX showed the most vigor with a triple top on June 26th to its all-time high. But for the third time, it was turned back as it tried to break out. Perhaps a sign of Neptune's propensity for passivity in the presence of Saturn's skepticism and doubts about the future. In Asia and the Pacific Rim, it was an exhibition of several divergences. India's Nifty index was the star, showing great exuberance as it soared to another new all-time high. Japan's Nikkei showed signs of renewed strength as it rallied to its highest level since April 4th, and now is in striking distance of its all-time high made on March 22nd. The Australian ASX index was bound to congestion, whereas China's Shanghai Composite and Hong Kong's Hang Seng index fell to their lowest levels since early April. Thus, India and Japan appeared more under the spell of Neptune, and China and Hong Kong more under the foreboding weight of an uncertain financial future associated with Saturn. The Americas fared much better, at least until Friday. Brazil's Bovespa continued to rally smartly into Friday, June 28th, following its primary cycle low of June 17th. In the U.S., both the S&P and NASDAQ nearby futures soared to new all-time highs on Friday, but then turned negative by the close for a key reversal down signal on a powerful geocosmic critical reversal date. The Dow Jones Industrial Average also made a new multi-week high on Friday, but, like the others, could not hold the gains and closed negative on the day, and thus continues the case of intermarket bearish divergences between the three indices. Intermarket bullish divergence was exhibited between the metals, with silver dropping to a new cycle low on June 26th, while gold tested its low of June 7th on the same day, but held above it. What is quite remarkable is how the solar-lunar values of the new MMA app have worked extremely well for the Dow Jones Industrial Average and for silver, but especially well for gold. The low of June 26th was yet another example of the new MMA market timing app identifying an isolated low from which gold reversed at least 2% in the following 1 to 5 trading days. Much credit goes to MMTA graduate Yating Hu for coordinating the research studies on gold going back to 1975, and exceptional programmer Jonathan Buehler, who is about to graduate from the current 2-year class of MMTA. The studies are based on the research design outlined in our books on solar-lunar trading for short-term swing traders. Yes, I am biased, but the results, the objective, have been truly outstanding since the app was released on May 23rd. Now, the short-term Geocosmics, an article from Friday's CNN.com. If the debate was the president's best chance to turn around a tight race with Trump, which has him in deep peril of losing re-election, it was a failure. Biden ended the night with the Democratic Party in crisis, with serious conversations taking place behind the scenes among senior figures over whether his candidacy is now sustainable, 2 months before the Democratic National Convention. End quote. And this from philosophers Keith Richards and Mick Jagger, and this will have a lot more meaning in just a minute. And I went down to the demonstration to get my fair share of abuse, singing, "We're going to vent our frustration. If we don't, we're going to blow a 50-amp fuse." You can't always get what you want. You can't always get what you want. You can't always get what you want. But if you try sometimes, well, you just might find you get what you need. Ray says, I missed Thursday night's debate, but I had a good reason for my absence, which is more than I can say for the current President of the United States, who probably wishes he could have missed that debate. My excuse? Well, I had tickets to see one of the 3 greatest bands of my generation, the Rolling Stones. It was a gift for my children for Father's Day. And, unlike the debate, which I saw upon returning from the concert performance was amazing. Mick Jagger, who is just as old as Joe Biden, had more energy and vitality than even Donald Trump. The comparison of Jagger and Keith Richards and Ronnie Woods to the lack of vitality exhibited by President Biden was off the charts. So now what happens? And how will this affect financial markets? Everyone thinks Mr. Biden will bow out, which would probably be the most patriotic decision he could make. But that's not a given from an astrological point of view. He has a fixed sign Scorpio sun in the 12th house. Fixed signs are not by nature given to changing their minds if they believe something to be true and right. And the 12th house can be challenged to know the difference between reality and illusion, if not even delusion, when it comes to the self, the sun. So he may fully and irrationally believe that he is the only person who can defeat Donald Trump, and staying in the race is the patriotic thing to do. Efforts to convince him otherwise might very well be ignored at best, or a cause for an angry outburst and rejection of the messenger at worst. Yet Uranus is transiting his 6th house of health and service, and is in opposition to that 12th house natal sun of vitality and leadership, and also Mercury of the nervous system and problems with communication. With Uranus in such an aspect, one's lifestyle is vulnerable to sudden change, either by choice, not likely given his fixity, or by circumstance outside of his control, which is more likely. On top of that, transiting Pluto is square to President Biden's natal moon. No one escapes Pluto transits unscathed. Pluto demands a surrender and a transformation of the path one is on. The more one resists, the more psychologically painful it becomes for the individual and those connected to him or her. In this case, it is the natal moon, which represents one's family. His wife or other family members may have to intercede and coax him to do something he resists doing, and something the vast majority of Americans want him to do, which is to let it go. I won't speculate at this time who might replace Biden if he is replaced, but I will say this. The period of time between the election and the inauguration could be very chaotic. I can imagine a case where the outcome is unknown for some time and leads to a sudden spike in Treasury prices. As an investor, I'd want to have cash available to pick up high-grade Treasury bonds and notes that might offer exceptional yields or value at that time. In the meantime, both Saturn and Neptune are turning retrograde between now and Tuesday, July 2nd. This is a powerful reversal combination for many financial markets, most notably stocks, metals, and crude oil. It is also a powerful combination for those seeking a religious or spiritual experience. But if not careful, it can also lead to delusions and unintended consequences. One needs to be able to distinguish between what is real and what is wishful thinking. If you act upon a fantasy and wishful thinking, you may find your dreams turning into a nightmare. If you examine your dream and work out a realistic plan to attain it, it can become a dream come true. Imagination based in reality can be a powerful force for good. The same is true with trading. If you have an intuition about a market, and you do your studies, make your plan, execute it, then the result can be nicely profitable. So this is a good time to identify a market making an important low or high, and then trade accordingly. We'll be providing insights on that in this weekend's MMA Options webinar, and there's information on that at MMAcycles.com and in the newsletter. But in conclusion, let me circle back to my night at the Rolling Stones concert and my statement that they are one of the 3 greatest rock and roll bands of my generation. The other 2, in my humble opinion, are the Beatles and Carlos Santana. It was a great night and a great way to honor Saturn of legacy and Neptune of music, going stationary in Pisces, the sign of art, music, and theatrical performances. And that concludes this week's newsletter, and what a great way to conclude it. Wouldn't you love to have been there with him? Maybe sometime, guys, maybe we could put a group together for some kind of thing like that. Oh, that would be awesome. How about the Eagles in Las Vegas? Would anybody be in on that? Whoa! But that wasn't one of the top 3 bands. You guys have a great weekend. I'll be back Monday with next week's podcast. Short week next week, obviously. The market will be closed on Thursday. Thanks for listening. Have a wonderful weekend.